The system is set up really only to knock out the worst stuff. So Systrom says that should be okay. That's not a violation of free speech. So what Instagram has done is they said, we're going to make a set of choices to try to elevate kindness and get rid of toxicity. We'll see what the other companies do next.
What's interesting?
I find Instagram a safe place.
Well,
Yeah.
It is a safe. It is.
I like it.
That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Let's be clear about this. As part of our policy, we do take race and ethnicity into account in building a diverse campus.
The Supreme Court has ruled repeatedly that race is an acceptable factor in college admissions.
We want our students to go out in the world and have an impact in a multicultural and diverse society. And to produce those kinds of students, we need to have a diverse student body on this campus.
But according to documents released this spring, admissions officers did discuss applicants in racial terms. No cultural flavor, reads one review of an Hispanic applicant. Very few African Americans with verbal scores like this, reads another.
But tonight, Harambe, no laughing matter at the state's largest university. A few RAs at UMass are actually banning Harambe jokes because some say they have racist implications.
The RAs warn that any crude remarks about the deceased gorilla would be considered derogatory microaggressions that are a direct attack to our campus's African American community. The RAs referenced an African heritage student community group with a similar sounding name, Harambe.
Just what's called a reaction image, a meme, you know. So somebody drops a ball at a big football game and you put a picture up of Pepe making a certain face and it's funny. But it has been appropriated clearly now by the alt-right, and it's used to express anti-Semitic themes. And look, you know, the swastika was around for about 10,000 years before Christ. But obviously now the context of it has changed since the 1940s, and I think Pepe has now been co-opted. At the very least, they're guilty of being racially insensitive.
So some modern white supremacists have gone even further than Hitler did, and don't just tolerate Asians, they actually idolize them.
Now you turn on NBC, and the farthest thing from your mind is color. What's going on at NBC? This is a discussion we should all be having, all of the time, here in this body, on news programs, and in entertainment. And it's a discussion I hope every family is having at their dinner table.
A divisive incident involving a group of Boston students and their iPhones.
Some students from the Boston public school system received a very hateful picture through AirDrop on their phones that had blackface and some disturbing messages inside it.
A statement from Boston Public Schools saying, "We are deeply disturbed that Boston Arts Academy students were subjected to racist conduct and are assuring the affected students are receiving support."
The detective division is looking at it as a hate crime. Certainly we want to make sure that this is properly investigated, that we identify the person who sent it, and then we'll make some decisions on what will happen from there.
The first time the transgender flag has been raised at a city hall in the territory. The flag was raised this morning in Yellowknife to mark Transgender Awareness Week. The blue and pink stripes are the traditional colors for baby girls and boys. The white stripe is for those who feel they don't have a gender.
Popular blogger and his official Baylor event scheduled for April the 9th is drawing anger by many in the LGBTQ plus family.
That Walsh will be speaking on how the left has set out to redefine life, gender, and marriage. And it's the hammer and sickle over an attempt at the LGBTQ flag that some say is inflammatory. Baylor alum Patrick Hill II of Austin has started an online petition to urge Baylor to cancel the event. He says, quote, "I started the petition to raise awareness about something that I perceive to be blatant and harmful hate speech. My goal is to have our concerns reach Baylor officials so that they could reconsider having Walsh's anti-LGBTQ plus message as an official Baylor event."
And, you know, my old job at the State Department was what people used to joke as the chief propagandist job. We haven't talked about propaganda. Propaganda, I'm not against propaganda. Every country does it, and they have to do it to their own population. And I don't necessarily think it's that awful. And this idea of a news cartel, I mean, I was editor of Time in 2012 during that election, and I remember, you know, you're competing against cartels and everybody. I remember being on a panel with the then editor of the New York Times who said, it's really hard to break through these days. This is the editor of the New York Times saying it's hard to break through. I wanted to jump off the platform. Like, what's it like for the rest of everybody? So, I mean, there are cartels, but cartels don't have hegemony like they used to.
A flyer aimed squarely at NDP candidate Morgane Auger, who happens to be transgender.
This is very, very personal. It's the most personal it's ever been.
It digs into her name, her anatomy, and her hopes to become BC's first transgender MLA, with comments like, when the NDP come knocking at your door, you can tell them you won't vote for them because you believe in God's definition of gender and marriage.
It's disgusting, and this is, this man is not living up to Canadian values.
Auger frustrated that instead of talking about the minimum wage or affordable housing, she has to deal with hate.
It's a violation of my privacy, and I believe it's a violation of my human rights.
Lots of businesses in the neighborhood have rainbow flags or these safe place stickers. The man behind the flyers not only ignored them, he mocked them. Christian conservative Bill Whatcott posting this smiling selfie of his handiwork.
He's kind of barking up the wrong tree.
The Liberal candidate for Vancouver Falls Creek also firmly in Auger's corner.
This kind of rhetoric has no place in the public discourse of this province.
Thanks for coming out today.
A show of support from friends so Auger can get back to winning votes, not because of who she is, but what she stands for.
It's not going to deter me from continuing to fight for justice and truth.
The accused gunman in the New Zealand mosque attacks bringing attention to a particular symbol of hate. The suspect appeared to flash a hand sign that traditionally means okay, but has increasingly been adopted by white supremacists and neo-Nazis.
Some investors were selling off their gold holdings to try to make up for losses in other areas. But Todd Hirsch says there's something else happening here too. Some investors aren't confident that with what gold is backed by, or if it's backed by anything at all, as compared to something like the U.S. dollar. Investors are comfortable that the U.S. dollar is backed by the American government. So no matter what is happening to the American economy, something like the U.S. dollar is backed by the Federal Reserve. That's going to be around a year from now. That's a much more comfortable investment for them.
Of course, lock her up was a feature of the 2016 Trump campaign. Do you, in retrospect, wish that people like yourself, the head of the FBI, I mean, the people in charge of law and order, had shut down that language, that it was dangerous potentially, that it could have created violence, that it's kind of hate speech? Should that have been allowed?
Sleep tight, little rainbow fish. I think Mika does and probably will model themselves more on me. I try not to put my obsessions onto Mika, but I do believe that Mika has the ability to choose.
Sleep tight, little rainbow fish. Sleep tight, little rainbow fish.